Hi, I'm Lauren and welcome to Burn This Not Fat. I want to thank you so much for being here and for checking this out. My video originally intended to be my final book review for the Be Nourished Body Trust Provider Certification Program. One of the books I read that I swore was a part of the program but then wasn't on the book list, I think it was part of a recommended reading, was Self-Compassion by Kristin Neff. And I cannot say enough about this book. It's absolutely fantastic. I have recommended it to at least a quarter of my clients, and I just love how raw and personal and relatable the book is. So if you don't know, Kristin Neff has done a lot of research on the topic of self-compassion, and she talks about the difference between self-esteem and self-compassion. So self-esteem is, I think, what a lot of, at least my generation, was taught while we were growing up. It's about like our achievements and the things that we do and how that relates to how we feel about ourselves, especially how we feel about ourselves in relation to other people. When we have high self-esteem, it's because we feel good about our accomplishments and we feel good in comparison to others. Self-compassion, on the other hand, is unconditional. It doesn't require us to have achieved anything, to compare ourselves to anybody else. It's built on these three core principles. The first being sense of kindness and compassion towards ourselves. So this concept of loving kindness. So treating ourselves the same way we would treat a good friend. The second is the concept of common humanity. So this means that we are one person, a part of a larger grand scheme of humanity, and to suffer is to be human, and suffering is a part of a human experience that actually connects us to the world around us. And so it kind of puts a little bit of a positive spin on the concept of suffering, which for some people is difficult to think about because when we're suffering it's really hard. But thinking about it instead as like, this is happening to me and only me, and why me? Thinking about like, I am suffering, and suffering is to be human. The last part of it is the concept of mindfulness. Kristin Neff has done a lot of research or a lot of, I guess, personal research and growth in Eastern religions, and there's a lot of focus on mindfulness and meditation. And so mindfulness is really the concept of observing moment to moment what's happening in our life, and then recognizing it, being able to name and describe it, and most importantly, non-judgmentally noticing our thoughts, our feelings, as well as the physical world and physical environment around us. So when you combine those three things, you, in a moment of suffering, can sort of, sometimes she recommends like holding your heart or giving yourself a hug or something that feels comforting for you, to give yourself that sense of compassion. And so and really say, like she says, like, it's okay, darling, or whatever words feel comfortable for you, it's okay. And so even just by acknowledging that this is a moment of suffering, you're being mindful and providing yourself with those words of affirmation, that self-assurance, what you would say again to a good friend who was going through something that they were having a hard time with. So it's just about these concepts of being kind to oneself. Research, which I found really interesting, is that the book really has a good balance of research to back up what the finding has shown and the practical applications. So there's quite a few exercises throughout the book where she describes self-compassion exercises, self-compassion breaks, practical ways of incorporating these concepts into your day-to-day life. And they're also available on her website as well, so you can print them off. And I have print them off and given them to clients to take home and practice. So that's something that I really liked about the book, is that balance. And so her research is showing that, self-compassion is far more of a motivator than shame is. When we're shamed or we feel shame about something, we don't tend to then be really motivated to do better. But when we have self-compassion, we really do feel motivated to do better and to be kind to ourselves and to participate in activities that make us feel better about ourselves or work to achieve our goals. So the practical sort of research side of this shows that people who are self-compassionate are less anxious, less depression, things like this. So there's some really great research. Another component of it that I don't think I've seen in any other similar type book is the incorporation of her own journey of self-compassion. So she talks about her history towards like the more Buddhist traditions and things like that, and partners she's had along the way, and a heartbreak she's had along the way. And it's very personal at times. I would say that if there was a part of the book that I struggled with, it would be that aspect of it. I think that it was very brave and vulnerable for her to show the ways that she has incorporated self-compassion into some of the most devastating moments of her life. But I also found it a little bit jarring at times, because I'm just not used to a text in the more of the academic realm, I guess, incorporating that kind of personal truth in its work. I'll also note that I listened to the book on audiobook, and the individual who recorded the audio for the book was not Kristin Neff. So I think that made a difference as well, is that I was very aware that I was hearing the voice of somebody else telling her story. So I think that also created a little bit of, not exactly sure what the word is, but a contrast, or just something kind of felt a little bit off, that I felt like I was peering into the window of her soul and seeing some of these very painful, very dark times in her life, but hearing it through the voice of somebody else. I think that perhaps if I had read the book, I might have felt a little bit more connected to her story, rather than hearing it through somebody else's voice. I mean, overall, I cannot say enough positive things about this book. I think that there's a really good balance, like I said, of the practical and the academic. I recommended it to a lot of people. I have gotten a little bit of feedback from some clients so far who say that it's a really tough read. And I would agree with that, because we're so used to being so negative and so harsh and so unkind to ourselves, that even recognizing that there's another way that we could have been relating to ourselves for our whole lives can sometimes be a little devastating. That it's okay to be compassionate, and a lot of times people feel this resistance to being compassionate because they feel that means that they're not going to be productive. I think for a lot of people it's really difficult to see that there's a different way of being. Even just the concept of saying to oneself, I am enough, can be really difficult. So I just want to thank Kristin for bringing this work into the world. She's just published a self-compassion and mindfulness, I think, workbook as well. So she's definitely continuing to do the work, and she has a lot of free resources on her website. I'm pretty sure it's self-compassion.org, but if you just look up Kristin Neff as well, you can find her. So that's all I have to say about the book. I really suggest that anybody who's looking to work on things like things that you would traditionally call your self-esteem or your self-worth, ways of putting up boundaries and being more assertive in your life and asking for what you need. I think those pieces, before you can even look at setting boundaries with other people, you need to be able to set boundaries with yourself and what's okay to say to yourself and what's not okay. So I think this is a really good foundation for anybody who's looking to do that sort of work for themselves. Thanks so much for watching, and thanks so much for listening, and I really cannot say enough, and I recommend that book. So go read it. Bye!